Welcome back to another episode of the Fly Culture Podcast with me, your host, Pete Tigers. One of the things I've most enjoyed about fly culture has been helping create communities and friendships. I was recently fishing with friends in Wales and ended up in a pub afterwards, and my guest for today walked in with another friend of fly culture, Gareth Lewis. We all talked, shared our days fishing, and talked about flies and everything and just about nothing. I really enjoyed it. It's also written for us, and I've just loaded another piece that will appear in the autumn edition of Fly Culture. I'm pleased to welcome Alex Thrift along to the podcast. Alex, it's great to have you along. Good to have you here. Are you well?
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. It feels a bit surreal actually being on this podcast. I don't really feel like I'm just a guy who likes chucking fly line around. I don't feel compared to a lot of the amazing people who've been on here. So it's truly an honour. Thank you.
You are welcome, and I'm just like you. I'm a guy who likes chucking fly line around as well, and people listening are exactly the same. So that is why they're going to enjoy listening to your story as well. But what have you been up to?
Well, I think you said a couple of those things: fishing and going to the pub. They're two of my favourite things in the world. So a day where I can do both is always a good day. But I think my life is pretty much governed by fly fishing most of the time. A lot of people who know me who don't know fly fishing find it obviously a bit strange, but yeah, it's very much working fishing.
And do you find it's because I'm sure many people this will resonate with them as well, that you often get introduced as the fisherman or fly fisherman if you're really lucky. And are you one of those people who will, once you get them in your tractor beam, that's it, they can't escape, and you'll portray your love of fly fishing to them? Or do you try and change the subject so that you can move away from that so that you don't get your teeth into them? Which way do you look at it?
I move away from it because I know that if someone's got something that's important to them that I'm not overly interested, I appreciate it's good for them, but I don't need to hear all the ins and outs. And I kind of expect that from other people. Like, I expect it from other people, so I'll do the same to them. I can tell if they ask me about it, I'll tell them, but I certainly won't. I won't push it. I'm just not that way with things. I like to. If people want to know, I'll tell them. But with social media, I do get a lot of people who would say, I don't even know saw it, would be like, "Oh mate, I saw you're out doing this or out fishing. It looks so cool. I'd love to join you." And then it's kind of like one of those, isn't it? You think, how do you take someone fly fishing who's never been? But yes, it is. It's definitely no. I try and move away from it if unless I've had a drink, and then God knows. But
I'm exactly the same. I think changing the subject is an easier thing, and it just sort of say I've been some nice places, and that's it. Because otherwise, you just go into download, and it's a dangerous one. Sometimes you might convert somebody, but also leave them wishing they hadn't asked that question as well. So yeah, good answer to
absolutely,
that.
yeah.
How's the fishing been for you?
It's been funny. If you'd asked me in April, it'd be a very different answer. But luckily, where I fish, so I'm based, funny enough, in the same village as David Smith, who you went to Italy with, and he's been a guest recently on the podcast, sort of on the Welsh border, English side. So I fish. I can fish very early in the season, dry fly on the Usk, but March and April were essentially written off. I had to kind of scratch around the upper catchments in the small streams, and even though those waters were really high and it was very difficult. But then the last couple of months have been, honestly, I've had a fantastic couple of months, really. It's gone, I've had to work hard for it, but I feel like I've had a lot of those nights, if that makes sense, the good nights. I feel like I've had more of those this year than I did all of last season. Um, and it's not all, of course, big fish. It's just catching. It's just those good evenings, good fly life, good rising fish. And yeah, I think I honestly, I'm with where I am at this point. I couldn't really be happier this season. It was a late bloomer, but it's bloomed strong.
That's great to hear. And there's a couple of things I was thinking about was that early season one, and it was similar for me that I just couldn't get to fish anywhere. And you get a bit, your head drops a little bit, and I couldn't really, I was finding fishing and I was doing it, but my heart wasn't in it in quite the same way. And then you get these sort of little windows, and it's been for me at least, a stop-start one. And it's great to hear that it's been a good one for you. And also, you mentioned evenings. Does that mean that you're sort of finish work and the first thing you're really starting to think about is, right, okay, where am I going this evening?
Yeah, well, there's two reasons really. I suppose the first being you get into the summer, like the late spring summer, and then weekends just fill up, and I can't always give. If I didn't fish evenings, I'd miss out on a lot of fishing. But also evenings, just they fire really well on the rivers I fish at the moment, and they have done really since mid-May. So yeah, definitely it's worth. I'm close enough that I can go after work and be on the river for quite a few hours and get back in the pitch dark. And there's a KFC on the way home as well if I'm feeling peckish. So it's perfect. So I think evening fishing for me is it is what holds up my entire season. I love it. It's I think you get that frenzy when it starts to just dusk and everything just feels right. Let's just imagine that the wind dies. Let's imagine the spinners start to fall. It's just, there's nothing better.
And does that mean that you said where you're located, does that mean that you have a home water that you would consider home? You don't have to name it if you don't want to.
No, happy
Or
to
do you
name
like to mix things up and the evening you're thinking, right, well, I fished here last night, perhaps tonight I'm going to fish somewhere else, and then the next night it's somewhere else? Or is there somewhere that's really special to you that will get a large amount of your time?
I think the Monnow certainly is what it's all about for me. It's the perfect mix of intimacy and expanse. I think you can do the long casts, which are really nice. You can open your shoulder, but then you've also got those really technical cross shoulder side cast under an overhanging branch, round corners, all sorts of crazy stuff. And I think you can be very selective on fish right. It's big enough that there is good, solid, dependable hatches for the most part, and fish do rise consistently. It's not like small streams where it's more, which I do a lot of, um, which is more the sort of opportunistic takes, all about that. But so I say the Monnow is like my, if I could only ever fish one river again, it would just, and say I say it's in this country, that's the one I'd fish. That I know, yeah, it's the one I know is home. Yeah, I'm born and raised in sort of Gloucestershire, Herefordshire border, so the Marcher lands. It's really, I'm so connected to it. It's in my blood, really. So it feels really homely. That being said, I do love the Usk. That's where I really learned in this country to fly fish properly, and it's where I learned. It's where I met a lot of some of my fly fishing friends that have become a big part of my life now. So I do love the Usk, but yeah, I think I've spent more time the last couple of years fly fishing in the smaller streams in the Monnow, and as such, my fishing on the Usk has definitely suffered. I'm a believer that every river has its own characteristics, its own personalities that you attune to, and I've definitely lost it with the Usk. Honestly, I struggle in there this year, definitely.
I like where you're coming from that, and my friend Stefano calls them small shitty streams when we go to Italy. That he loves to find me something that is ridiculously small and challenging in a different way. And it was interesting what you were saying about the Usk, because I guess that, and I don't like using this term, but it's more of a technical river, isn't it, to try and fish and get on top of. Whereas the smaller streams, and you said opportunistic rises, I'm guessing where you're saying that you mean you're probably more likely to be fishing the water than to fish, unless, of course, you see one. Would that be your sort of approach? And would that be why your Usk fishing, as you have said, and I'm sure it's not the case, but you said has suffered a little bit as a result of it?
I think partly, I mean, I love fishing. For me, as a fisherman, it's I'm dry or die of. I don't think of the old school. I think I'm new school. I'd say I'll come to that later if you want, but I love fishing at rising fish. For me, the cast, if you're not doing that, the cast just doesn't. I just can't get joy. It's like I heard a term. I think it was in a video somewhere recently. It was like firing a shotgun into a forest to try and get a bird or something. I like to fish at a rising fish. It feels more like stalking. It's that intimacy, that connection between you and the fish. And if I'm not doing that, my heart's not in it in the same way. The exception to that rule being small stream fishing, because the anticipation comes from the water. You're fishing these small little areas which will hold fish. But I think because I have been fishing the smaller waters, something about the Usk, I've just lost my mojo with it. Whether it's my casting goes to pot. I don't know why. I'm not casting even as far as I would on some of the Monnow stretches, but I think because I'm overthinking things, I'm trying too hard. My striking, I've missed so many fish. I fish a lot with Gareth, and we can go on to that one. But I'm in danger of becoming stroppy sometimes being there. So then, if I want to refine my mojo, I have to fish on my own into the smaller water, and that's where I refind it. And it's great to have the three, and if I could just have them all working harmoniously together, it'd be fantastic. But that's probably a little bit too much to ask.
Nice. Now that brings up a really interesting subject for me. And you said about mojo and how you're getting to the river. And I talk about this a lot on here, but do you think that's because you're arriving at the river in that frame of mind? So it will take something for you to just come out of that a little bit to say, right, okay, I'm back in love with the Usk, or I'm going to fish it a little bit better, that you're sort of arriving thinking, I think this is probably going to be hard work. And as a result of that, that makes the fishing as you see it and the way that you fish that little bit more tougher, perhaps?
Possibly. I haven't really thought too much about it. I mean, it could well be. I think if you play a lot of cricket and you do a lot of batting, generally speaking, you get a few runs in, you'll play better. And I think if I fished the Usk more, I'd get back on tune with it. And it's not. I still love the Usk. I want to fish it more, and I know um, I've done well in the past on it. It's just I think because then because I spent that much time on the smaller rivers, my confidence is just higher there, and I just understand the language better with it. I'm just more in tune to it, more aligned to it, and I've just fallen out of that kind of alignment with the Usk. But I think if I just said, right, next 3 weeks, every time I go out, I'm just going to go to the Usk, I'd soon find it again. I hope so, anyway. But yeah, I haven't really thought too much about it. I have, but I haven't analysed it.
Yeah, I think you've nicely put that, and that makes a lot of sense. It just fascinates me. You used cricket there for an example, and we're in the back end of Wimbledon now, and I watched Djokovic last night, and I watched the documentaries about sporting people, and a lot of that battle is going on between the ears. And I think some of that translates into us in our little pastime. Not that we're trying to win Wimbledon or score 100 at Lords or whatever that may be, but in the way that we actually approach our fishing and the way we fish as a result of it, due to how we're feeling. And I'm very similar sometimes, that sometimes the tone of a day can be, I might get a leader out, and sometimes you put it between your fingers so that you can unravel it carefully, and then somehow it still gets knotted, and then that immediately sets a tone for that day for me. And it takes me to sit down and say, right, forget about that. You can either unpick it or save that for another day, put a new one on, let's have another go. And that can get you out of any potential funk. But it's these sorts of things to me that really fascinate, to hear these stories from anglers as well, and how we can overcome those things. Not like I say that we're trying to save the world with it, but to understand how we're fishing and what we're doing as a result of it. And what you said there was of great interest. And yeah, I think that mindset really does mean something. I'm still talking stupidly. I've got a new cap to break in tomorrow. and I'm nervous about that. I'm suspicious about nothing in normal life except fishing caps. And so I'm nervous about that. And so that's going to affect things. So I'm sort of mentally trying to prepare myself for that. Does that kind of make sense for where you're thinking as well?
No, I'm not superstitious at all. In fact, I like getting a new hat. Whereas, a fisherman, Gareth, whenever he gets a new hat, he says, "That's me done for the year now. I won't catch a thing." But no, I do. You say it's our little pastime, and it is for us, isn't it? Well, no, it's not. It's for other people, it might be a small little pastime, but for us, I mean, fishing is our Wimbledon. Every day on the river is Super Bowl for me. I love it, and it's important to me. Um, Not that I have to. I don't care. I'm not really a numbers guy or a big fish guy, but I want to know that I've done as well as I can. Well, not really, actually. I think it's more. Yeah, I just like being. I like feeling like I have a chance. That's all I can really ask for. And I think, like you say, with the knotting, when you want to get set up and you make a mistake early and that's it. I think the way I've learned to deal with that, and I think it's been my biggest piece of advice I would give to someone who's looking at getting better at fly fishing, because it worked for me, is just to slow down. And I mean, from the second you get out of the car, just be slow, be cool, take your time with things, and then that then translates to your stealth, to your approach. Be slow, be slower than you think you got to be. Your casting stroke, be slow. For me, anyway, I find I get too excited. I'm quite excitable. I try not to be. I have to work really hard not to be excitable. But I think then, because if I'm getting to the river, I get really excited. Especially that's probably what it is with the Usk. I'm excited to be there and see it, and then it's because I'm not sitting there and chilling out and just getting in the zone of the river. I think I'm just not in the groove of the river, and that's, I think, one of my favorite things about fly fishing, and especially about being a dry fly fisherman, is that taking the time. You feel the flows and the ebbs of the river, don't you? And you take it all in, and you understand it. And I think it's when I'm not doing that properly, that's when I'm making my mistakes and losing my mojo. It's that connection, isn't it, with everything that needs to be good. And that, to me, is fishing mojo. That's how it works for me, I think. Could be wrong, but that's how it feels.
That makes a hell of a lot of sense. And let's face it, the fish are not going to go anywhere, right?
We hope not. I mean, despite many many things, best efforts, but yeah, no, um, they're not. No, and you just need to accept that, really, that not every day is going to be lit up. And I think with rivers like the Usk, the big, well-spoken rivers, maybe you feel sometimes that you should be performing, or it should be better than it is, and maybe that gets in your head. I don't know, but it is an interesting one. But
Yeah.
no, I wouldn't say I'm going back to yourself. I'm definitely not superstitious. I try not to be. It's just another complexity in life that I don't understand, that I don't need.
That makes perfect sense. And yeah, I'm going to try and be that way tomorrow about my cap. I think I'm going to find out I'm too old to change, and it kind of, I think it makes me subconsciously fish a bit better because I've got a new one. So I don't want it to be unlucky. So there have been caps that I've thrown away after a couple of wears, and particularly when I was guiding, that I thought, well, that I had some tough days, and those went straight away. So they didn't end up. But I think tomorrow's one's going to be as good as gold. But we were talking beforehand, before we put on, we were chatting for a little while before we started recording, and you said you were just reading something, and what you're saying about yourself as a person, as about a fisherman, and you said you just read something that summed you up. You felt perfectly, and I'm sure I'd love you to read it out, because I think many people listening, it will mean something to them. Can you just read us and tell us where this came from as well?
Well, of course. So the book I was reading was West Country Fly Fishing, which obviously is very much from your area, Dartmoor, Devon, Cornwall, South Somerset. And I picked it up a little while ago just because I like those sort of books. But I was reading it a little while ago, and the quote that actually it jumped out at me and it hit me was, it was, "So give me a light trout rod and the dry fly, and a stream which runs clear through moor and meadow, and I ask no more of the day." And yeah, as a fly fisherman, my relationship with fly fishing. It was very profound, and very something I connected straight away with.
Yeah, I love that. And like you say, it sums up, and I think it will resonate with many people. And when you've just read that, then it made me think about fishing as a whole. And we sometimes seem to overcomplicate it, don't we? And that, in those few sentences, has encapsulated exactly what fishing is about. It's that simple, really, isn't it?
I think it's the most simple thing in the world. I'm extremely simple as a person. I try to be. I try to keep my life simple because there's so many things going on that you cannot control. That and even in fishing, you can almost control no variables at all. I've said it before. The fish, you can't make a fish rise. You can't make the wind stop blowing. You can't make a hatch happen. You can't do anything. So I think that if you just strip it down to its bare basics, it's a beautifully simple thing. And and I'll keep going on about dry fly fishing because unfortunately I'm one of those guys. That is fundamentally who I am as a fly fisherman. I'd say I'm very simple. I'm very minimalist with all my gear, with what I do and how I approach it. And I think that was part of exactly what you're saying. That part of that quote that was so relatable to me was just how simple it was. And to see that, and how simple the quote was really is just, yeah, it's very, very clear to read.
And does that mean, you've mentioned Gareth a couple of times and Dave,
Yeah.
does that mean that you enjoy spending your days alone or your evenings? Or do you prefer company, or is it a mixture of a little bit of both?
Yeah. So fishing friends, I know is a controversial subject for a lot of people, and there's a lot of mixed opinions. But I would say I've been extremely lucky with my fishing friends. Um, my first fishing friends were actually, and it's where I learnt to fly fish, was in North Sweden, which is very sort of an interesting reversed journey into fly fishing. But the background being, to make a short story long, my dad is a timber agent who represents a couple of Swedish and Finnish sawmills, and this one in particular, based right up in the north, called Stenvals, is we very close family friends now, and his son Anders is the son of the owner. He's called Folkin, and his son Anders is one of my best friends, and I used to go with my father and my brother. We'd go up there in the summer and just go camping with them and go up into the mountains. Folky would take us up. He used to have a de Havilland beaver, so he'd take us onto the lakes, middle of nowhere, for a week at a time. Not weeks, that'd be nice, but a week at a time, and we'd do a bit of trolling, bit of spinning. But then I always had an interesting fly fishing. I have no idea where it came from. I think it's seeing just the old flies in a box look so bug. I don't know what it was. I can't tell you. But I got into it, and then that was it. Then never looked back, and every year try and go to stay with my friends up there and stay with my friend Anders, who, yeah, he's my first fishing buddy. And but then coming here was a bit of a I was lucky but almost unlucky to start my career fly fishing in North Sweden, because it's kind of like it's a mecca. It's undescribable. Not just the fishing, but the place. I actually saw a quote, and I can't, no, not a quote. Sorry, I'm not going to keep going about quotes, but it was a word to describe North, like an idealistic vision of North Sweden of Sweden. It's called, I've got it here, Bulbury syndrome, and it's a term referring to the idealization of Sweden. And I have that most days of my life. It's crazy, and it's when you think of Sweden, you think of the green forest, the lakes, all the amazing stuff. So to learn fly fishing there and to bring it elsewhere is quite, it's almost unlucky, if that, without being sounding ungrateful. But coming here, I ended up joining Gwent Angling Society, and I was going back to cricket. I was playing in the village team, and I heard someone talking to Dave Smith And I didn't know Dave. I knew Dave, but I didn't know he was a fly fisherman at this point. And someone said that it was like April, I think it was. And someone said, "How was Cumbria, Dave?" He goes, "Yeah, fishing was good." And I thought someone would go from Gloucestershire to Cumbria course fishing, but I don't know why they would. It sounded more like he would be a fly fisherman. So I asked him, "Dave, are you a fly fisherman?" He goes, "Yeah, I am." I said, "Well, so am I. Where do you fish?" "Oh, I fish for Gwent." "Oh, so do I." So we hit it off like instantly. And then at this point, I was still in I didn't really understand English fishing yet, or English Welsh fishing, UK fishing. I was quite new to that. It's very different. So Dave really showed me a lot. He didn't not directly instructing me or guiding me or teaching me, just fishing with him. He's just like me, or I'm just like him. Dry fly, quiet, sit and watch. He loves the bankside beer. He loves the smoke, which I do. He's a great conversationalist, a deep thinker. So I learned quickly from just being with him and watching him. So yeah, he's a very important fishing friend to me. And then one day I was fishing on the Usk on my own. It was bitter. It was like late March, one of those classic spring days. It was like 4 degrees. I ended up bumping into Gareth towards the end of the day. Gareth Lewis, sorry, who, I mean, he's blue tick, isn't he? He's verified. He's a celebrity angler. Everyone knows Gareth. I was a bit starstruck because I'd read a lot of his articles. I'd seen a lot of his flies. I've followed him on Instagram, and I was a bit like I am today. Whoa, this is a bit weird. Fished with him the rest of that day, and then from then that was it. I fish more with Gareth than I probably do without, if that makes sense. And he's going to become one of my better friends. So he's very similar to me. He's got a similar sense of humor. Loves a beer, loves a fish. Very, aside from him just being a lot better at all aspects of it. So fly fishing friends. There's few of them, but they're very, very good fishing. They're good friends, let alone fishing friends. So if I need to regain mojo, as I said earlier, I'll go on my own. I have to be on my own, but otherwise, I'm always sending those texts or asking, when are we fishing this week? I'd much rather do it with people, but very, very specific people.
That was beautiful, and I'm with you on that. It's a very small amount of people, isn't it, that you say, "Do you fancy this? Do you fancy that?" That you can, and they'll go, they're going to say yes anyway. And that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it was so, for me, thrilling because obviously I was with Dave when we were in the pub that I talked about in the introduction. I was with Dave there. Hello, Dave. Loved your dye T-shirt that you were wearing in Italy as well. So another disciple.
Absolutely.
But seeing you two guys walk in lifted me, and it was lovely to be able to meet you, and everyone feels the same. That's the really nice thing about it, that you think, "Oh wow, that's Alex, and he's written for us," and there's Gareth, and I know Gareth a little bit, and it's just really nice to be able to spend time. And I know we had a nice chat, and I really, really enjoyed it. And this is how this came about. And your ethos and your feel and your love and your vibration with fishing is a really nice one to feel as well. So much more to talk about as well. And you talked about how those fly fishing came to you, and you talked about perhaps how flies looked in a fly box to you, and as a result that was an attractive. Given the people you hang around with, I guess you're a fly tyer, are you?
Yeah, I'm a fly tyer. I'm not I'm not very good. I tie a limited catalog. I tie what I need, if that makes sense. Just this year, Gareth gave me a couple of his leftover. He had some can't think what you call them now. Some hackles, some capes, and he gave me a couple of capes. And he said, "Oh, I've only got these sort of sizes left in them, but I've really enjoyed using those because predominantly I was just CDC and squirrel, and I tied like 3 patterns, and I tie them buggy, I tie them scruffy. It's kind of actually the good thing about not being as good as someone like Gareth at tying is that I don't have to make every fly look the same. Yeah, I can, because I know he's very good at that. He's a very tidy fly tyer. Everyone would agree. but I've got that freedom, that license just to mess things around a bit and just get them really scruffy and get that variation. Yeah, I'm a tyer, but I tie to purpose. I'm not like and I tie when I have to. I find it sometimes more stressful than stress relieving. I don't have a dedicated space for it, so the setup time and all that in it makes a mess. And yeah, I'm kind of one of those guys. But I do like it when I'm into it, but I have to be in the mood for it, I'd say. But no, I do enjoy it. I do enjoy it, and I have started to explore a couple more patterns, but no, I've got my favourites.
That's lovely to hear. And yeah, I've still not tied a fly. So however many years that's been, and I've got friends like Warren and Perry who tie really nice flies. So I use their flies and they're
Exactly.
great. And I saw Dave's ones when we were out in Italy and they seem to be working very, very well. And again, we'd had this nice conversation before we switched the record button on, and we were talking about tackle, and you said something really interesting to me. And I think I'm kind of with you because I know I make people flinch when they see me putting a rod down or throwing it under some barbed wire or whatever that may be. But you said that you don't keep it nice; you like to use it, which is really nice. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Oh, I'm just a fan of patina. Um, I no, I don't have. I'm a, I've got a pretty savage mortgage and all these different things. I haven't got mad money to spend on fly fishing gear, but the gear I do have is little, but I cherish it and I use it. And if I'm gonna get a good bit of gear, I want to use it. I want to get that patina on it. I think I came across, and I'm going to sound like I'm just a guy of quotes, but this was a quote that kind of sums up how I feel. Someone once told me about wine. They say, don't drink good wine on good days, because on good days, bad wine will taste good. Drink your good wine on your bad days. And I kind of like that in life, just generally. Don't save things for good. Use them. Enjoy it. On a great day when the river's popping, you could give me a Audi special middle aisle, my first fishing rod kit, and you would just bank up, wouldn't you? You'd have a great day. You wouldn't care. So yeah, if I have my stuff, I want to use it. I want to enjoy it. A scratch on the reel, that's a story. That's just part of you using it. You can't expect to keep things nice forever, because that's kind of like, what's the point of having it? What's the point of using it? Give it the respect it deserves by being on the river. That's how I think of it.
I've got a rod that I took to the States and I was fishing the Madison and fell over, and it's got a big scratch on it. And I won't sell that rod because it reminds me of the Madison. I don't even fish it. I haven't fished it probably for however long, but I know it's there.
Yeah,
I know that scratch is on there, and I know where that took place.
that's
And
lovely.
so it will stay where it is. And there's many rods come and gone out of my life, and I'm going back to think, oh, actually, I really liked that one, and I'm sort of trying to search some of them out as well to say, were they as good? Are they still as good as they were back then? So I'm sort of going through a bit of that phase at the moment. But tell me, what's your Hall of Fame rod and reel with a scratch or two on it?
Nice.
What are you most in love with?
Yeah, it's an easy choice, really. I recently had a rod built by Nico at Yamame Fly Rods. Is pretty special. That's changed the game. I think he's a great guy, lovely guy to speak to, and I like his design. I like his builds. And there's loads of other guys that I also like their builds. It just so happened that I'd come across him. I like his vibe as a person. I like the way he just is, and it's spectacular. It's stunning, and the cork is nice and worn in now. It feels right in the hand. It feels good. Um, and my reel is Ben Perrin. He's a South Gloucestershire chap. I'm a North Gloucestershire chap, so that felt right. Handmade to his design again. I like, if I'm going to get something off a builder, like a craft builder like those guys, an artisan craft builder, I don't want to have too much input in terms of the handle. For me is essential on a rod. I think too many handles don't suit me. I'd rather cast a lousier blank but with a handle that I preferred than vice versa. I think it's so underrated in the cast because that's your connection, isn't it, to everything. So the entirety of fly fishing is a handle for me. So that's the one thing I'd say non-negotiable. That's how I want it. But in terms of the design, the color, when Nico was saying, "Oh, what color do you want this wrap or this?" I said, "Surprise me. Do what you think works. You're the builder. It's your design I'm buying, not mine. If I could do it, I'd do it myself. But I can't." And the same with Ben. I think we kind of, as he was showing me pictures, the sort of idea I had just evolved, and I just kind of let him run with how he liked it really. And I said, "Does this build sound good to you?" And he said, because that's fundamentally, I don't want him to build something he doesn't want to build. I want to see that like pride in it from him, from the builder. So it was great doing that. And now I've got a rod and reel that no one else in the world will ever have. There's no duplicate of it. You can't duplicate it. And that's pretty cool to me. I like that a lot. That's my Hall of Fame. That's the two. That's the setup.
They're good choices too. I have a Nico rod, and I was just talking to him yesterday, funnily enough, and I have a Ben Perrin, which Emma got, surprised me for a birthday present, and they are really, really cool. And I'm very, very like you, that I always will say, build me what you build. Because like you say, it's a true representation of that builder, and because they are a niche person, that's what they're specialising in. So I want their best representation of it. And was Nico's rod a glass one?
No, if it wasn't. It was because it's like a one arrow quiver, if you will. If I'm going to North Sweden, you got the big lakes, you got the wind, you might do some further casts. And I think I just wanted something like on the Usk, it's bigger, windier. Even the Monnow, you get away with it. I went just for a McFarlane graphite 9'4" weight. It's absolute money. It is absolutely perfect. It's changed. It's made me do casts I didn't think I could do. It's brilliant. I love it. It is. Yeah, could not be happier. But I would love to get into glass. Sorry.
That's a dangerous road to get down as well. But McFarlane, I'm guessing if it's like their glass blanks as well, and I've got a Stefan graphite rod, and it's slightly deeper loading. I'm guessing the McFarlane's similar, is it?
So it's interesting. It loads really deep, but it recovers really fast. So it's got this incredible. You can load it quite short range, which for me is pretty essential. But you can just keep feeding it line, and it just keeps on giving. It's got that backbone to it. It's got that soul. I just don't know how it's done. It just defies. Yeah, and I like a slightly faster rod for a dry fly point of view. Honestly, I think I like being able to get tight loops in. I like being able to do, because often where I'm trying to get a fly is in some pretty weird places. And if I've got a softer rod, I haven't got the casting ability necessarily to get those. I'm sure I could if I just got used to it, but I like how it feels. I like being able to fire it in there. But then, yeah, with the deep flexing of it, you can slow it down, and it just ticks all boxes for me. I don't know how. I can't explain it. I'm not a casting instructor or a theorist or anything. I go by feel, and it feels pretty good.
Fascinating what you say about that, and I'm thinking about the Stefan. I think I described that, and particularly as I talked about older rods and looking at those. And the Stefan for me is almost like a modern version of the Sage SLT. That's how it feels. Like you say, deeper loading, but super quick to recover, and an absolute pleasure to use. So perhaps I should be searching out more of these that are the modern versions of those rods that I'm thinking about. So yeah, perhaps I've answered my own question, or you've helped me answer that question. But you made some interesting points about reaching the handle thing for starters was really interesting to hear about, because that's a very pertinent point. And yeah, that's the bit that you're holding on to. So I really like that as well. But you talked about having to get your fly in some interesting, difficult, challenging places. And so casting as a result comes into that. And on the previous podcast I did with Richard, that we wanted to talk about casting a little bit more. It's with Richard Tong, and we wanted to talk about casting a little bit more. We ran out of time, but is that something that you think about? Do you practice your casting? Do you think about your casting? And so when you've got that rod in your hand in a real life situation, if we call it that, life becomes a whole lot more easier.
Unfortunately, I probably should. I'm on the night guy with it, really. And it's funny because I fish with Gareth Lewis, who's a certified casting instructor. So I feel like I've just put myself in the deep end and had to up my game. But also, I just try not to take it too seriously. You know, I take fly fishing seriously, but I don't take myself that seriously. And I think if I started to cast, I don't know, I don't think I'd enjoy practicing it. It wouldn't feel the same. I think a lot of what I do is it's so dynamic. I mean, a lot of the time to get the fly to a fish, which is ultimately the goal, I'm doing things that don't even have a name. You know, some casts that we do on these rivers can be crazy things that they're just out of necessity. They don't look good, you know, but they work. And so I think it'd be hard to practice because it'd be hard to pick a snare. And also, when you are casting at a rising fish that you know is potentially a good fish, everything goes out the window. All your you know, all the theory, all the principles, and you just got to do what you got to do to get that fly onto that fish. And so I think our practice would be wasted on me. Honestly, it'd be no good at all.
I love your honesty, so thank you for that. I wanted to move on a little bit and look at the fly fishing landscape. And the reason I want to ask this was particularly after what you just said about not taking yourself too seriously. And I think that's deeply refreshing to hear that. I'm similar, that fishing means so much, yet I don't mind. I don't care if I lose fish. I deal with that absolutely fine. I'm not worried about that in any way, shape, or form. But the fly fishing landscape as a whole, how's that looking to you right now? Is it, as you see it, in contraction? Is it growing? Is it as it is? Are we a sleepy backwater that will always be a sleepy backwater, and that's fine the way that it is? How do you think it looks to you right now?
I think there's different ways of looking at it. I think globally, from what I can see on social media, it looks to be doing really well, especially in places like America, Australia. I see it growing there and that area, and many other places, South Africa even, I'm seeing really coming into the forefront with it. And it's younger people as well, and and it might not just be, but they're obviously the guys making the films and putting it out there, and the girls actually. I think I'm seeing a lot of girls in women fly fishing. It's fantastic. Um, the sleepy backwater is certainly where I fish. It does seem not to be moving a whole lot. Doesn't seem to be growing, or I know I think we're down a few members potentially here and there, or sometimes we might be up. So I don't really know enough about the fly fishing industry to be able to give you a good answer on that. But from how it feels, there's some incredible content out there to see, some great films, some great social media, some great media in general, and it feels good. And I think with that then comes good awareness about biodiversity, conservation, such things. It leads on to that really well. So I think it feels good. It feels good to me. Just maybe not exactly in the small area I am. Maybe that's just, it doesn't feel bad. It just doesn't feel like it's particularly growing or subsiding.
Do you think, and you use the term social media there, do you think social media has made our pastime a global pastime, rather than, should we be looking at fly fishing globally rather than just per country? And so everyone's putting into that, and that's helping pushing forward, because we can pick up things more quickly than we could do in the past. We can see things, we can learn about different techniques, learn about different locations. So should that be how we should be looking at it these days?
I mean, it's certainly how I look at it as a global thing. Just because of my social media, I'll go on a story now, on my story, sorry, and I'll see someone from Iceland sharing a Scottish salmon awareness post or something, or an anti-salmon farming thing, and it's been shared by people in all over the world, that same post. So I think there definitely is massive global connection. I'll have a picture that's liked by someone I've never met in America, for example, about me, just dicking around in the Welsh borders. I think there's definitely a global, almost like a hub of fly fishing for me. That's how I interact with it anyway. But yeah, how it sort of shares it, it's hard to know. I don't know. I think there's definitely you can learn a lot just by sitting on your phone about fishing in other countries, can't you? Quite easily you can learn a lot, and you can sort of get a sense of the different cultures. And I mentioned South Africa. From what I've seen of that looks fantastic. That's sort of the bush culture there, the hiking. It's similar to a lot of places, Australia, Sweden, even. But each has got their own individual sort of subculture within that. So yeah, I see it as a global hub. That's how I look at it, and then from there I will divert to whichever area I want to get into.
I wonder those people who you mentioned the person in the States, and I'm sure there are many who have liked your post. And I often think about fly fishing. There's almost, and it doesn't matter which tier you're in, but sometimes people do it alongside many other things. And then there's us who it just means the world to and so much to. And that's you connecting with somebody who feels like you do. And that's kind of neat, isn't it? That you've, like you say, it's somebody in the States that you'll probably never meet. You might speak to via Messenger or whatever that may be, but you've connected with that person because they feel like you do. That's kind of cool, isn't it?
It's epic. I mean, you can just look and think, yeah, that person, I reckon I'll get on with that person. They're camping, they're fishing, they're appreciating the same things I appreciate. They look like having the best time in the world, and I'm all over that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I enjoy it, and I always try and like whatever I possibly can. I ration myself now, so I do it that way. And we were talking off mic, and I was saying, I have a love-hate thing. Sometimes I just don't understand it, but I'm enjoying putting content out at the moment. And for me, that's my way of sharing things with people. I'm kind of enjoying it from that point of view. But I wanted to move on a little bit more as well, because you've talked about those rivers in Wales that you love to fish, but you mentioned that Dave had been fishing up in Cumbria when you first spoke to him about fly fishing. Are you somebody who likes to travel around the UK in search of trout?
I mean, I would like to. The last couple of years have been such that I haven't had a chance to really get out. I know Gareth, I actually spoke to you about coming down and fishing in Devon. I'd love to do that. I would love to fish up in Cumbria. I mean, I say this all the time. England gets such a bad rap for fly fishing. People think of England and they think of chalk streams, they think of cane, tweed, fishing hut lunches. I mean, I fish a lot. I've never done any of that. There's so much awesome opportunity for fishing here. And yeah, I do want to do more of it. Honestly, I'd love to do so much. I'd love to fish more locally to me than I do. It's just getting to it. You end up having your familiar spots, don't you, and falling into not a rut, because it's a good rut. I like being in that rut. If that's the rut, I'll be in it all day. But I would love to do more exploring the rest of the UK for sure, and way more into Wales, into Scotland as well. I haven't even touched that yet. So yeah, I need to just make a bit of opportunity for it all, make a bit of time.
Nice. Well, you're welcome down here whenever you like. So you've just got to say the word. And like I said, I know we've I've talked to Gareth about it as well. So you guys are both welcome down here whenever you like. And I've talked to Dave about it as well. So there could be something in the making there. And you make some really interesting points about there is no place like home. And I'm guilty of that as well. That I often think, oh, well, I'll go and fish here, I'll go and fish there. And then you want to, I love the mood of your home water, and you sense it, you feel it, and you take it in whatever mood it's in. And sometimes it's hard to leave that because you might miss it being in a really good mood and equally being in a bad mood as well. And that brings a different set of challenges. Do you think that's part of why it's harder to move away from the places that you love so much?
Well, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, is it? I think sometimes, and this goes back to the whole simplicity of it all, of fly fishing, is that just enjoying what you know and appreciating what you have. Huge things in life, we all want to go, and I could list 20 places that I want to go and fish around the world, but you know what? If you're looking elsewhere and you realize you've got incredible places to be in, incredible fishing, and I think it's easy to then overlook that. And that's goes back to when I was fishing in North Sweden and coming back here. I didn't actually find it that hard to appreciate here at all in comparison. When you're up in the north, it's spectacular, it's special. It doesn't get dark. It feels better. It smells amazing. Everything about the whole place is incredible, and it's easy to sort of pine for that and sort of think, oh, I'm just sort of fishing here until I get to go back there again. But no, I love it here, and yeah, I think if you have water like this, you gotta use it. You gotta appreciate it because it is special.
Can't disagree with that at all. Nicely put. You've written a couple of pieces for Fly Culture. One readers would have read, and there's one coming out in the autumn edition. That was Sweden, the first one, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it was.
Which is lovely. So you may well have read that if any of the listeners read the magazine. Have you enjoyed it, and did you learn anything from that process of writing articles, and what brought that about for you as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I mean, you put an amazing platform for people like me, people who have things that they want to say, but well, not want to say, but would like to say, and and a good way of doing it. I think, yeah, I loved it. I haven't done any creative writing since school, since lower secondary school, but I always loved it then. But I never quite had a reason to take it on or do any of it since. And just being able to sort of write about how I felt about things or the experience I've had was really nice. I loved it, and I learned that I just want to do more of it. And I learned that perhaps everyone's got a style within them, that a style of writing or such things. So no, I loved it. It was great to do, and just being able to sit there in like a winter evening and just think, put some words down. It's medicinal, really. It was great. So I think that to me was the biggest value of it all. Actually being very kindly published by yourself was the icing on the cake, but just writing was great. I loved it. I loved just doing that. That process was really not something I've ever done, but something I definitely want to do more of. Whether it makes it to you or not, it's just fun to do.
I'm pleased to hear that. So I will publish it, and I look forward to seeing some more that hopefully you'll send my way. What advice would you give to somebody? Because, like you say, we have a platform with Fly Culture to be able to do this thing and to be able to break new writers. And I'm really keen to be able to do that. What advice would you give to somebody?
It's the same advice I'd give anyone about anything. Is just don't try and be inspired by people, but don't try and emulate them. I know it's a stupid thing to say, or it sounds like probably the least helpful advice, but genuinely be yourself, and trust your own voice. I'd say I don't think enough people do that. Trust your own voice and trust that people will be interested in the stories you have and how you want to say it. I mean, so many stories I've read in just the last couple of fly cultures. For instance, I've thought I would love to meet those people that are write in that way. I think it's fantastic, and I just encourage people to write how they are, not how they want to be perceived. Write how you are. That'd be my advice, and I need to tell it to myself more, I think.
Funnily enough, while you were saying that, I've written 2 words down, and it was own voice, because I was
Yeah,
going to say that if you didn't, and I'm pretty sure you were, and it made me smile when you did. And that's the really important thing, is just because somebody writes in a particular style, it doesn't mean you have to. What's interesting for me, as somebody who sent a lot of articles to read, is that I've not seen that angle before, or the way that that's put together. And that's a really salient lesson, I think, for somebody, as you have eloquently said. Use your own words. Don't use loads of words. The less, the better. But think about where you place them, and
yeah.
express that passion in as fewer words as possible. And you've done that beautifully for us.
No, thank you. I believe things shouldn't be homogenized, and they shouldn't be put into boxes. And I think the same with fishing. There's fly fishing is such a wide. There's so many different subcultures with their own subcultures within fly fishing alone. And if I thought I was reading something that was missing how it should be, I'd sort of be disappointed, because there's so many people have so many different takes on fly fishing, so many different experiences with it, or reasons why they do it, or reasons how they got to it. And I think let a bit of that come through in your writing. Let that show. Don't just try and be like, you can be inspired by people, as I say, but just say it your way. That's what I want to read. That's the stuff I enjoy reading the most.
And that's the stuff I want to publish as well. So great advice there. You've given some beautiful answers. You've looked at fishing in a beautiful way. So apologies, I'm probably going to trip you up a little bit. We have the Fly Culture road trip mix of songs that people who have been guests on the podcasts have chosen. Some of the people are musicians, so we've got their music on there. There's over 6 hours of music on there that I'm sure you'd find something in there you'd like. But this is the curveball. This is the one everyone seems to dread. Have you got a song for me?
Yeah, I got a couple that the very opposite end of the spectrum, but I'm just gonna say the one. I'm gonna say Kenny Loggins' "Highway to the Danger Zone." Let's just put that in there.
Top
Let's go
Gun.
with it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Nice. That's going in. So I will put
Yep,
that
locked
in.
in.
Great choice. Locked and loaded, I'm sure they probably said in there as well. So that's a lovely choice. We've talked about our love of home water, but let's just fantasize for a little bit, just for a few minutes. Is there somewhere? Is this? I've got a place in my head that I'm wondering if you're going to say. You probably won't, but where's the place that you would love to, if you got the opportunity and you got some time, and you could pack a rod away for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, a month? Where would you go visit?
Ooh, okay, okay. So I've got there's it's between two answers for me. The first, I am fascinated in history. I absolutely love old history, but in terms of as a looking at fly fishing from a historian's point of view, the thing that interests me most about it is and we have to go into the goods and bads of colonialization and where people have gone over time. But I am fascinated by the places that brown trout were put, incredibly remote places all over the world, all over where our empire and beyond went. And I know you can debate the good and the bad about that. And I'm not saying it should be done now, but part of me would love to go into some weird, very high altitude lake in Nepal and try and catch a brown trout that somebody put up there a couple hundred years ago. That's up there, but I'm probably just going to say Japan. That looks insane. I love a lot of the Japanese culture, Japanese food, the mountains, the rivers looks incredible, and I'd love to try and catch a shaku, arana, or yamame trout, I think that'd be awesome.
They are awesome choices. Completely knocked me out. I did write Bhutan. So
Did
that was
you
my choice. I thought you were going to go for
really?
that. So I had Bhutan written down here, but they are
No
beautiful
way.
choices. And I had somebody, it's only because it's one of my favorites as well. And I thought we seem similar in how we think about, you're much cooler, but we think
I
about
disagree.
fishing and view fishing that it's always been there or thereabouts for me. It flickers in and out. And I thought perhaps, but they're beautiful choices. And funnily enough, I had a message from somebody, Nick, just the other day, and I replied to it this morning and asked me whether I'd fished in Japan today. That's really weird. And he was asking me about it, and I said, it sounds absolutely amazing, really, really interesting, and completely different. So
Yeah.
wonderful choices there. I think they are fantastic ones. And yeah, I can see where you're going with that one. So absolutely
Thank you.
fantastic for that. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, Alex. We're coming up an hour now, actually, and it's
Wow.
absolutely flown by. But where can people find you? Where can they connect with you? What are social media handles? How can people get hold of you?
Oh, if they want to see a very mediocre Instagram page, they can go on Alex Thrifty, all one word. I'm posting a bit more. Like you said, I'm enjoying social media. So I'm posting a bit more. I'm trying to set a bit more of my aesthetic and put again my voice onto it. I'm just not as good at visual stuff as I'm writing apparently, but I wouldn't say I'm particularly good at writing either. But yeah, Alex Thrifty on Instagram. That's pretty much the only place you'll find me on social media. If you wanted to have a little poke around, that's where I'll be.
Fantastic. Now I'm going to hold up a piece of paper. The listeners won't be able to see it, but there you go. That says Bhutan,
Oh
but it
wow,
looks
yeah.
backwards to you probably, but there it
No,
is.
that's right on. Well, I can't believe that.
So that's a complete fluke. So there we
There
go.
you go.
Perhaps there is some sort of wavelength going on there, but
Next fly culture
fantastic
trip, I
to
reckon.
there. Wouldn't that be cool? That would be fantastic. But it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. I've really enjoyed chatting just generally about fishing. Your view on fishing, your take on fishing is refreshing. It's interesting. And I'd love to say a huge, massive thank you for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast today, Alex. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure and the gratitude are all mine. Thank you so much, Pete. It's been fantastic to chat with you.
Everyone, this has been the Fly Culture podcast. Thank you so much for listening. There'll never be any charge for these. I just love talking to like-minded people, and hopefully you enjoy listening to like-minded people talk about this little pastime that we love and means so much to us. So thank you as ever for listening to this episode of the Fly Culture podcast. There'll be plenty coming very, very soon. Thanks so much for listening.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.